What's going on, you guys? TBR here, back yet again with another King of Fighters All-Star video. And in today's video, we are going to be continuing our ongoing Spotlight series that has been, admittedly delayed because there's been, a little bit of an update called the Christmas update featuring Chizuru. But in today's video, we are going to be able to get back to our regularly scheduled programming, thank goodness, as we are going to be taking a look at Ino in her official Spotlight here on the channel, running her through her paces in all things PVE. How worth it is it to build this character? We're going to find out, but before we do, make sure if you guys haven't already done so and you enjoy daily King of Fighters All-Star content such as this, you smash that like button and subscribe. And with all of that being said, cue the intro. Alright, you guys, so as always, let's go ahead and start out with the typing and the leadership ability. Ino is going to be a green attack type fighter with a leadership ability that increases Guilty Gear fighters' attack by 60% and decreases their HP by 5%. It is also important to note that she is not going to be an SS character, meaning that she is not going to have that extra long, extra nice awakening rotation that you'll love to see, so that is something that will be a common thread as we go through here, so keep that in mind. Now, when we talk about the typing for Ino, she is going to be a green attack type. This basically means that she isn't necessarily going to be called for outright in a lot of different modes, specifically things such as Reviving Hill's Dungeon, and this is also going to indicate that this character is a bit of a glass cannon. That is also going to be a little bit of a downside to this character, as she is also not going to be an SS character as we've already established, meaning that she isn't going to necessarily like to take hits from characters such as Nightmare Geese in lunatic difficulty of guild raid and so on and so forth. However, these are going to be things that largely she can work around and aren't that big of a deal. So in general, when it comes to the typing, not much to write home about there. So when we talk about the leadership ability, this character is going to be probably, in my opinion, the second most important leader for the Guilty Gear fighters, mainly because she is going to be able to increase their attack by 60%. So basically, she isn't going to be able to increase the power charge rate. That is going to be a perk that is reserved for characters such as Romlethal with her leadership ability, who we've already done a Spotlight video on. However, as I mentioned, this in my opinion is going to be arguably the second most important for all the leadership abilities for this set of characters. Mainly, this is going to be useful for things where you're going to need that extra attack, such as in Guild Raid, and in general, being the fact that so many of these Guilty Gear fighters are so good in Guild Raid, this is very important and is going to carve out a really nice niche for this character beyond the obvious ones that we're going to outline today. So with all of that being said, that is the typing and the leadership ability and kind of your general overview. With all of that done and out of the way, let's go ahead now and talk about the cores. So right off the bat, you'll probably notice that this character does not have that 30% power charge rate increase that we see with a lot of these different fighters nowadays, but instead she is going to have a 30% poison attack damage increase along with a 20% power charge rate increase. It is not that big of a deal. This character is still able to fire off her finishers quite often, and it isn't really ever something that comes up. However, it is something to note about her kit. So when we talk about the exclusive cores, we'll start out here with Time Traveler. This is going to decrease the cooldown of antidepressant scale by 0.5 seconds every time a basic attack lands, and deals poison damage equal to 5.5 times of the remaining poison damage, and removes poison upon landing an active skill on a poison target on a cooldown of 2 seconds. So in general, when it comes to this core, this is very, very strong. Antidepressant scale is a very easily exploitable skill in general, so being able to help decrease the skill cooldowns on that skill is very nice. However, do keep in mind it is only relegated to your basic attacks, so that's just a little idiosyncrasy to this one, as we have seen cores such as this on other characters. However, they've each kind of separated themselves in different ways using different mechanics, and that's just the way that this one is going to work this time around. And then when it comes to her overall explosion core, while you don't necessarily like to see explosion on cores because they're harder to work around, especially when they're on a very low cooldown, you will notice that with this character, where it matters the most, such as Guild Raid against Nightmare Geese, this character is still going to be able to do extremely well when it comes to her overall shield shred, so it isn't really a big deal. So good stuff in general. Next up here we have Magi, which is her final exclusive core. This is going to reset the skill cooldown of Stroke the Big Tree upon landing an active skill on a shock target on a cooldown of 10 seconds, with a PvP exclusive of having a 70% chance to remove buffs from the target's active skills upon landing an active skill on a cooldown of 10 seconds. And then we have the Guilty Gear exclusive core that we've already talked about numerous times here on the channel. Now, when it comes to this one, basically the reset of the cooldown for your S2 is very nice. You have two separate ways to overall help either decrease the cooldowns of some of your skills or reset them, so that's great stuff in general, and it is definitely a big perk to her overall kit, especially when you consider the fact that she is going to be able to land shock on characters quite easily. Then when you come down to the PvP exclusive, having a 70% chance to remove buffs from the target's active skills is very nice in general, and it is something that will come up there in PvP such as Championship. However, when it comes to PVE, which is the bigger focus of these showcases and these spotlights, it isn't necessarily something that's that much of a focus, so there really isn't a whole lot to talk about. And in general, when we take a look at the cores, they are a little bit sparse in general, but that's mainly going to be because, as we've already noted, this character is not going to be an SS character, and so therefore you've come to expect that these skills and these cores are going to be a little bit, just a little bit lacking by comparison to the more limited premium characters, but not anything that's that big of a deal. And in general, this character is going to stand extremely well on her own. So in general, guys, that is going to be the cores. Now we can go ahead and move on to the skills. The S1 is going to apply Venom on the target for 9 seconds upon landing a skill, and then have a 70% chance to reset the cooldown when using a skill on a cooldown of 12 seconds, with a PvP exclusive of disabling the target's active skills for 4 seconds upon landing a skill. In general, the S1 is very interesting, as it is basically going to be a heat-seeking missile to the target. It is not going to have off the ground, but it does stagger, and in general is very exploitable. On the S2, Ino is going to have her source of hyper armor for 3 seconds, as well as an interrupt that is limited to being airborne. In general, the S2 tends to be one of her most reliable skills, as this is of course going to be the coupling of your hyper armor as well as your interrupt, but this one is going to be limited to being airborne, so keep that in mind. Also to note with this skill is it is going to be full screen and boast off the ground as well, so in general this is going to be an extremely nice skill. The S3 is a very interesting skill, as it is going to increase your attack speed by 10% for 7 seconds, and your attack by 38% for 7 seconds, while dealing shock damage equal to 35% of attack every 1 second for 7 seconds upon landing a skill, guard included. When it comes to the S3, the most interesting thing here is this is going to have very nice range and be able to connect with enemies both in front of and behind Ino, as well as boasting off the ground, so in general this tends to be her best overall skill when it comes to mob grouping. When it comes to the finishers, as you guys can see, there aren't going to be any onboard effects, but when it comes to the core finisher, it is going to be on the average side for these core finishers for these types of characters at around 5 seconds, and in general is just going to be kind of an average overall finisher, not anything too special to write home about, but it gets the job done. The 3PG finisher is going to increase our penetration by 800 for 10 seconds when using it, so there is going to be an effect on the card itself. Now when it comes to the finisher, it is going to be more on the average length for some of these Guilty Gear collaboration characters, as it is around 10 seconds, and it is a full screen cinematic, so great stuff overall. Now when we go ahead and take a look at the cards, as this character is not going to be an SS character, she is not going to have access to some of the SS card sets that we've come to expect with a lot of these characters, so in general she's going to appreciate a Guilty Gear set the most. However, if you do have the 7-night set, then you can go ahead and slap that on her as well. Otherwise, you just want to go ahead and fall back on your overall kind of staple offensive card sets that you would find yourself using for some of these non-SS characters, such as an Akane set or a Leah set if you really are in a pinch. Now when we talk about imprint stones, this character is of course not going to be an SS character as we've established, so she is going to want the Guilty Gear attack stones in general, and then when it comes to your star and your moon stones, you can go ahead and either go with poison or shock based star or moon imprint stones that are going to be attack oriented, and that is going to be the best overall setup for this character in my opinion, unless you have some of the projectile based exclusive R stones or something like that that can go and slot into your star and your moon slots. So in general, you guys, that is going to do it for the kit breakdown for Ino. You guys are going to find that I am very happy and very impressed with this character as a budget character in general. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into why. So right off the bat with Ino, the first thing that I noticed when using this character in general was her mobbing capabilities are extremely strong. Now this is going to be due to a combination of the fact that the S1 and the S3 are going to be perfect for mobbing, and when it comes to the S1 in particular, there's plenty of fun little tricks and idiosyncrasies to it that you're going to find yourself using as you play with this character more. In general, you can kind of send this thing out and it'll kind of hover around even in between waves until a wave will show up, and then it'll kind of just go to them and do a ton of damage for you. The S3 being the fact that it can group mobs both in front of and behind you is also really nice. The only little thing that I've kind of noticed with this character, however, is with skills such as the S1, they don't necessarily group mobs as well as skills such as the S3, so keep that in mind. But when it comes to this character's bossing as well, she outputs a ton of damage as an attack type, so keep that in mind. Her awakening rotation will take care of most bosses with ease. Now when we get into PVAI, there really isn't a whole lot to be said here, and I feel bad when we get to this section of any of these videos because I tend to repeat myself, but with PVAI, there really isn't a whole lot to say in general. PVAI tends to be extremely simple with most of these characters, and Ino is no different, really thanks to the fact that she can exploit the S1 and the S3 so well. The overall PVAI performance here is going to be exceptional. Now undoubtedly, if you guys have been keeping up with the Spotlight series on these Guilty Gear fighters, then you'll probably already know that all of the Guilty Gear fighters in their own right are going to be very nice for Immortals, and with Ino, she is not going to be any different, as this character is going to be kind of in the middle to upper end of the spectrum when it comes to the Guilty Gear fighters and their performance in this mode. Now when it comes to Ino, one of the biggest things about her is the fact that she is going to be able to output a really nice amount of damage as an attack type, so this is going to help her out a lot in this mode, and in general she is going to be able to go in and put in a ton of work as a DPS for you. She's also going to have that nice long 10-second cinematic finisher for her 3 PG card, so when it comes to her performance here, there isn't really a lot that's left to be desired with her. However, I would say that you'll probably be better off using a character such as Romlethal to lead a team using her, mainly because she isn't going to be able to boost your overall power charge rate, and that is typically something that you want to see against these Immortals. However, if your account is strong enough, you can even go ahead and circumvent that, not have to worry about it, and still be able to go in here and kind of face roll these Immortals. So at the end of the day, when it comes to the Guilty Gear collaboration, I've said this a million times, but it bears repeating. I feel like if there's any game mode that these characters kind of outright broke, it's definitely going to be Immortals, and I think that's been proven time and time again here at this point, because all of these characters, no matter what combination you use at the end of the day, are just going to exceed expectations, and in general, really the only negatives about her against Immortals are just going to be nitpicks. Now when it comes to Guild Raid, in my opinion, and this is really where you guys are going to hear me be pretty hype about this character, in my opinion, Ino is going to be, without a doubt, the best budget option in all of the game for things such as Nightmare Geese on Lunatic and Expert difficulty respectively. As I'm sure you guys are aware, having the fact that she is going to be a poison and shock based character, this character is going to be able to go in against Nightmare Geese and absolutely put in work. One of the nicest things about this character in Guild Raid is going to be the fact that not only can she output really nice damage, even despite the fact that she isn't going to have that extra long awakening rotation, as she isn't going to be an SS character, she's still going to be able to shred shield and do tons of damage with ease. In general, when it comes to her performance here, the biggest thing that you need to keep in mind with Ino is the fact that she is going to be a bit of a glass cannon, so you're going to have to be a little bit careful and pretty quick on your thumbs when it comes to your dodging in order to keep her alive, especially if you're going in and planning on just soloing with her. However, the nice thing about this character is she is fully capable of being able to solo this with ease, so long as you are dodging, as I mentioned. Now, one of the biggest things against Nightmare Geese that you need to keep in mind with this character is she really does not like that ground aura technique, so you're going to have to be very careful of that. But in general, that's kind of just a nitpick and something you could levy against most characters, because at the end of the day, when it comes to Ino against either of these harder difficulties against Nightmare Geese, you're going to find a little better options out there, especially for a cheaper investment such as this one. So at the end of the day, if you're somebody that doesn't have a lot of the premium versions of the characters that are going to have shock or poison respectively, then Ino is going to be your best overall bet. And in my opinion, this is going to be the biggest perk to this character in general, so great stuff overall. So at the end of the day, while not perfect, Ino is the best overall budget option for Nightmare Geese in my opinion, and very viable across tons of modes. She's just a little bit squishy and doesn't have access to SS cards or stones. So if you guys can't tell, I'm very high on this character for very good reason. When it comes to Ino's performance across a plethora of different modes in PvE, she is going to offer up some amazing performance for you, and if you have this character, specifically if you are struggling against Nightmare Geese in Lunatic or Expert difficulty, that's really where this character is going to shine the most. However, I would definitely argue that you don't want to sleep on this character when it comes to her performance in these other modes as I've outlined, because she isn't going to be the strongest character in the entire game in some of these other modes, but at the same time, she's going to be one of the stronger ones for the budget options. So I really do think that this character is going to be viable and very important for a very long time. So if you have her, count yourself lucky. You have a character that months down the road from now, people are still going to be wishing would come back, and I do think that this is going to be a character that is going to carve herself a niche in this game for quite a while. So you guys let me know in the comments section down below what you think of Ino. Like I said, I'm very high on this character, so I'm curious to see what you guys think. But until the next one, I hope you guys found this informative. If you did, smash that like button and subscribe, and I will see you all in tomorrow's video. Peace.
Continue.